Well, hello and welcome to another in the series of Cafe Insights. And today I'm at the Fullerton Hotel here in Singapore with Mark Lowdy. How are you?
Hi, Andrew. Good to see you.
Great. Mark is best known for his time as a broadcast journalist with CNBC, where you were there for about 7 years, and previously on radio as well. Welcome to Cafe Insights. So what keeps you busy these days?
Well, thanks for the invitation, Andrew. I guess there are two things that I'm focusing on for most of my time. One, of course, is to host business events, and you're obviously instrumental.
That's how we work together.
That's how we work together. And hosting business events is really, I suppose, an extension of the sort of work I used to do at CNBC. Yeah. Except, of course, it's much more fun because you actually get to see your audience, unlike in television. And I also focus a great deal of my time on coaching others in how to present, with a specific focus on media training, and not just the traditional media, but also social media, because, a lot of companies produce their own content these days, as well as for internal communications, where CEOs might be required to give town hall addresses or manage strategy changes or brand changes for an internal audience, staff and so on. And also to focus a lot on pitching. So a lot of entrepreneurs, CEOs going on roadshows, CEOs ahead of difficult annual general meetings. Mm-hmm. Those are the sort of people who I help to make a better impression on their audience.
The interesting that you say internally as well, because it does matter very much about how you communicate with your troops on the ground.
Well, if Shakespeare was alive today, he wouldn't be saying all the world's a stage. He would be saying all the world's a video. And there are enough examples where CEOs have been caught out, not because they didn't present well in front of their internal audience, but because somebody in the audience pulled out their mobile phone and recorded them, put that on YouTube, and all of a sudden these comments that were made internally, to a small group have become public knowledge and spread far and wide. Mitt Romney famously had that happen to him during the presidential election campaign a few years ago. Do you remember that? That was a charity event, and somebody recorded his comments about the 47%.
Yeah, and within seconds it was all over the world.
Exactly. So, it's gone so much further than just I'm talking to staff or I'm talking to the media. You're talking to everybody at the same time.
I was going to ask you, with all the experience that you've had working in the media, what the biggest changes are that you've seen, and I guess that's it really, isn't it, in terms of how pervasive and immediate social networks have really made communication?
Well, how long have we got? The fact is that the media in the way that it existed when I joined radio or CNBC just doesn't exist anymore. Right. And the trend is quite obvious. Advertisers follow audiences.
Yes.
Advertisers don't actually buy airtime or space in the newspaper. They buy access to an audience. So if the audience is no longer reading the newspaper or watching the TV station, where do the advertisers go? And the answer, of course, is online. The end result of that is a disintermediation of the media. Do we really need the media? Do we have a media organization now? Cafe Insights. That's InsightBureau.com media or Insight Bureau TV. There's really no need to have the media in the form that it was 15 years ago. Now, that doesn't mean that they'll cease to exist, because there's still a certain amount of credibility that comes with a third-party storyteller. But certainly, I can't think of any other industry that has changed as much as the media.
Back to the moderating, which is the world in which you and I work together. You have been moderating a number of different events, both internal and external. There have been conferences where there's been an entire day that needed a safe pair of hands to guide them through, keep the time, but also make sure that the issues are properly covered. And other times where it's been just a single session. But that was the important session of all, the highlight, the keynote or the keynote panel that needed to work well. What are some of the examples of things that you've done like that?
Well, I suppose a recent example, which also was quite weighty, I'd have to say, was managing a discussion among various conflicting parties in an industry where you had some very extreme views. Unfortunately, it was Chatham House rules, so I can't tell you any details, except to say that we had, people kind of lunging across the tables at each other. It sounded a little bit worse than European Greek debt negotiations. But, it was quite dicey. And so my role was really to make sure that everybody left the room having made progress on their positions, maybe be less intractable, be more willing to cooperate, and work towards a resolution, if not actually solve the problem altogether. And, to that end, I would hasten to add, you mentioned keeping the time. To be honest, that's an important part, and a good moderator will keep to time as much as possible. But it was actually the least of my worries at that time.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I don't think people will have thought about the importance of moderating internal, confidential meetings like that. More often, of course, we're talking about, high-profile events where, an organisation's probably invested an awful lot of money in a program. And this is one of the things that I'm talking to my clients about all the time. You spend all this money on a keynote, you've flown all your executives in some cases you've spent a lot of money even bringing your clients together. Yet, what kind of thought process has gone into place to really make sure that event program that you've devised actually works?
You would expect me to agree with you now.
I would.
And of course I do. But let me just explain a little bit as to why. Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings. Do you remember these names?
Yeah.
These were the big names of American television. And the reason they were so famous is because they were the anchor. And as the name suggests, they held everything together. In a TV station, there is little as important as the anchor. Reporters come and go.
Yeah.
Stories come and go. Locations even come and go. At the end of the day, it's the individuals who are holding all of that together, the anchors. And they're called anchors for a reason.
That's the why, yeah.
They're the ones where all the emphasis is, because the TV stations recognize that without that anchor, you don't have a face that ties it all together. You don't have the ability to nut out an issue from a third-party perspective. If you choose somebody internally, to moderate an event, chances are they're going to ask much softer questions, because after all, it's their boss who they're interviewing on stage and so on. So the bottom line is, if you're running an event, you really need to look at the moderator not as the guy who keeps the time, but that you really look at the moderator as the anchor, without who you don't have the show.
When I think of some of the keynote speeches that I've seen, on paper, we've had a really great person, and everyone's anticipated this would be absolutely fantastic. On the day, it was quite a letdown. Because, well, we didn't really get the real person. What we got was a prepared speech. What we got was someone else putting in a lot of corporate fluff. And what people in audiences want to see is how that person managed to do what they did. How do they feel? What do they anticipate? What do they see? What is their vision for the future? And I think this is one of the things that's kind of lacking in many programs, and I try and encourage that as much as I can.
Yes. It can be difficult for people to let go of the prepared speech and to not choreograph things as much as they might have done in the past. But let's again take a step back and look at what audiences actually want. Consider for a minute what gets the most hits on YouTube. Do you know what gets the most hits on YouTube?
No.
Well, let me tell you. It's music videos, how-to videos, and closed-circuit television footage of something extraordinary happening. And in all cases, we're now no longer looking at these highly produced, slick, well-choreographed productions. The clips that get the most hits are the ones that look real, the ones that look authentic, the ones that don't look staged, the ones that really kind of carry across that, hey, you are here with us in the moment. And so in order to take what the audience is already expecting and putting that on stage, it doesn't require a lot of courage. It just needs a speaker who is given the freedom to be able to do that, to not have to read the script, but who is able to make comments within the agreed conversational topic, of course. But the audience is so much better served when you have that element of authenticity, sincerity, surprise.
Another aspect of this, which we were chatting about earlier, is how organisations sometimes think about events as discrete, like it happens on Thursday and Friday. But it doesn't. An event has a lead-in and a lead-away. And I think being able to draw much of the content, either to excite people to come to the event, or to give tangible takeaways that people can share after the event, is something that a lot of organisers fail to do.
True. In content marketing terms, it's called tent-poling. We are all so conditioned now to watching things on video and expecting to be able to see a video on whatever subject we want, that event organizers really do themselves a disservice by just having the speaker speak and not capturing it on camera. So they've paid you and your speaker the fee to appear. How are they now leveraging this investment to be able to say, we didn't just have a 2-day benefit of having the speaker on site, But we had 3 months worth of benefit in the lead up to help promote the event, and we've had another 6 months after the event of benefit by having captured the speaker either on stage or in an additional interview. And that content obviously doesn't just then help to reinforce the event that you've just held, but also helps you market next year's event to your paying audience or to your sponsors or to your staff or whoever you're doing it for. You know, we really need to look beyond the traditional way in which events used to be staged and really realize that not only is it possible for us to use technology to extend the value of the event, but we have to extend the value of the event to cater better to our audiences.
Yeah. And I've seen it done very well, with a mix of the content in the conference and also sound bites from the speakers. But another element, of course, is getting the reaction from the delegates themselves.
Exactly. And any number of delegates will tell you that the events that are most engaging, the ones that are most memorable and the ones that they'll come back to next year are the ones where they felt they had a role to play. They didn't just come along and listen to endless plenaries. They came, they got involved, they got engaged, they contributed to the content in some form. Television doesn't have to, but television can play a role in ensuring that this community of people consisting of the speakers, the delegates, the sponsors and exhibitors too, lives on long after the event and actually lives on all year round, so that next year when the event rolls around again, you're not kind of reactivating people from scratch and kind of saying, hey, you know, remember us, we met last year, but you're actually simply extending that community for another year and building on it. And I might also say that, you know, if you think that people aren't going to go to your event because they can watch it on YouTube, that's a very big misunderstanding of what events are about. I mean, people go to events to meet people. Yes, the content is important, but it's the value in networking that, frankly, television can never replace.
I remember we had a conversation when I was at the Economist Group about how the internet was going to kill conferences, but far from it. People still want to come together, look each other in the eye, shake hands and share experiences.
Because it's the chance meetings. I mean, how many times have you bumped into your next business partner in the buffet line? Right.
Fascinating stuff. Well, Mark, thank you very much for spending a little time with me today. You're a busy guy, you're flying all over the world doing various things. Anything interesting coming up?
Well, you know, as I focus very much on moderating business events and presentation skills training in the various forms that I've mentioned, it's certainly taking me throughout Asia, but also to the Middle East increasingly, the US and Europe. And I can't wait to get the opportunity to interview you on Cafe Insights for a change, Andrew.
We'll turn the tables another day. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.